Today we're going to be doing a review for quiz 9, Algebra 1, and the first problem is this. Find the vertex, the axis is symmetry, and then graph the equation f of x equals x squared plus 4x minus 1. Sorry, 1 second, gotta check if the speakers is right. It's not. Alright, so I'm going to find the vertex first. There's a vertex formula. It's x equals negative b over 2a. And a is what's in front of the x squared, b is what's in front of the x, and c is the regular number at the end. So a is 1. There's an implied 1 there. B is 4. And c is negative 1. So when I plug those values in here, I get negative 4 over 2 times a is 1. Which gives me negative 2. So I got two things for that. I got the axis is symmetry. There's one answer. And when I'm looking for the vertex, I also got the x-coordinate of the vertex. Now I'm going to have to find the y-coordinate also. So let me do that now. The equation, in order to get the y-coordinate, I'm going to plug in that negative 2 into the original equation back up in there, plus 4 times x minus 1. Okay, so when I plug those values in, I plug in the negative 2, both spots, square it. Negative 2 squared is 4, positive 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8, and 4 plus negative 8 is negative 4, and negative 4 minus 1 is negative 5. So that is going to be my vertex. Now, I could also look at this, because a is positive 1, I know this graph, this parabola is going to open up. All right, so I've got one point, which is the vertex, which is at negative 2, negative 5, 1. I need to zoom in a little bit so I can find where negative 5 is. 1, 2, should be here, I think, if I counted correctly. Negative 2, negative 5. Okay, so now I've got only one point here, okay, and I need more. I need at least 3, maybe 5 points, okay, for my graph. All right, now I like to put the vertex in the middle here, okay, so I want to have some points beyond that, which means I'm going to go up 1, which would be like negative 1 and 0, and down 1, negative 3, negative 4. And then I can plug these values in here. I'm going to erase the negative 2 for a minute. Let's say I plugged in negative 1. Negative 1 squared is positive 1. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. And 1 minus 4 minus 1 is negative 4. So that's what I get here. Now if I plug in 0, I like plugging in 0. It's nice and easy. 0 squared is 0. 4 times 0 is 0. You get negative 1. Now I know that these are actually going to match because it's a symmetrical kind of thing, and they're both, you know, negative 1 and negative 3 are both equidistant from negative 2. They're one step off. So anyway, I can now graph my points. I got 0, negative 1, and negative 1, negative 4. And I can tell you already there's a mistake here. My mistake is going to be when I go over here and I go negative 3, negative 4. You know, I'm not getting a symmetrical kind of pattern. My mistake is I put that one in the wrong spot. This should have been negative 2, negative 5, which is actually over here. So if I go this one is also not symmetrical, so I'm catching all kinds of mistakes because this is a symmetrical kind of thing. And my last point is going to be negative 4, negative 1, which is over here. Okay, and then I can fill in my graph. It's not going to necessarily be perfect, but it should be good. All right, and I'm good. All right, so that was number 1. Probably the hardest problem out of the bunch I'm going to do here. Number 2. what are the solutions to x squared minus 4 equals 0. Alright, so I'm going to just solve this with the square roots. I want to get the x squared alone first, so the first thing I'm going to do is add 4 to both sides. And I get x squared equals 4. Next thing we do is take the square root of both sides. And the square root of x squared is x. This is going to have two answers, square root of 4. Run out of space here, so I get x equals plus or minus 2. And that is the answer. It's just actually two answers. You could write it like that, or if you want to write x equals 2 and x equals negative 2, you can also write it like that. Either one of those is fine, okay? All right, number 3. Uh, 2x squared minus 12 equals 116, and the directions are the same. Solve. What are the solutions to that? I'm going to get the x squared alone, but first I got to get the 2x squared alone. So I'm going to add 12. And when I do that, I get x squared equals 128. Now I can get rid of that 2 by dividing, because that's 2 times x squared. The opposite of multiplying by 2 is dividing by 2. And I get x squared equals 64. And I'm almost there now. Now I can take the square root of both sides and take the square root of 64. And the square root of 64 is 8. So I got two answers, x equals 8 or x equals, 8, not 9. 8 or x equals negative 8. You have to write both answers. One of them's wrong if you don't, okay? At least. Okay. Next one. That was number 3. I'm on number 4. This one will say solve. And I got x squared minus 5x minus 6 equals 0. All right, so in order for me to solve this, you got to factor it, okay? Can't bring the 6 to the other side and take the square root because I got this minus 5x in the middle. However, when I'm looking at things that multiply to negative 6, since there's nothing in front of the x squared, this should actually be pretty easy. You know, there's not too many things that multiply to negative 6. Either 6 times 1, where one of them is negative, or 3 times 2. I wrote this down wrong. This should be plus 6, sorry. Which means that's going to be plus, that's plus. So either, if I make them both negative, then they add up to negative 5. So that's what goes in my parentheses, x minus 3 and x minus 2. Now I'm not done yet because it says solve it. It didn't just say factor it. If it said factor it, I'd be done and move on to the next one. However, I need to find out what the two answers are, which means I take both sets of parentheses and set them equal to 0 and then solve the two equations. In this case, it's easy. You just add 3 to both sides over here on the left, and I get x equals 3. On the right, I'm going to add 2, and I get x equals 2. And those are my two answers, which are actually the opposite signs of what I had over here. So make sure you don't write down that the answers are negative 3 and negative 2, because they're not. All right, that was number 4. Number 5, my last problem. This one will say solve also, or it might say find the x-intercepts, or it might say find the zeros. Those are all the same things. It's asking you to do the same thing. And the equation is 2x squared plus x minus 6 equals 0. Okay, so this one's different than the last one because of that 2. That 2 right there is going to cause me a little bit more work. So in order to start, I'm going to go a times c, which is 2 times negative 6, which is negative 12. And then I'm looking for the factors of negative 12 to add up to the middle number in front of the x, which in this case, there's an implied 1 there. Anytime there's nothing in front of an x, that's implied 1. Okay, things that multiply to 12. 6 and 2, 4 and 3, and 12 and 1. Now, I know one of them is going to be negative because I need it to multiply to negative 12. So, and I think if I make that 3 a negative, then they should add up to positive 1. Okay? So, now I'm going to break this up. And I got the, doesn't matter if I put the 4x first or the negative 3x. It doesn't matter. I'm going to put the 4x first. Okay, and now I'm going to factor by grouping. You know, find out what goes back to the left side. Draw a line down the middle, factor the right side. Okay, so on the left side, I can pull out a 2. They both have x's. I can pull out 1x since the 4x has 1x on it. And what I'm left with is x plus 4 divided by 2 is 2. On the right side, I can pull out a 3. And then I'm left with negative x minus 2. Now my parentheses don't match, but if I pull a negative out here in front of that 3, then I can change both the signs in the parentheses. So it goes from being negative x minus 2 to x plus 2. And then this side stays the same. But now my parentheses match, which means now I can write down my two factors, which are going to be x plus 2. The other one will be what's outside of the parentheses, which is going to be the 2x minus 3. So I got two things that multiplied together and equals 0 now, which means I take, what's in one parenthesis, set it equal to 0, take the other set of parentheses, equal it to 0, and this will give me my two answers. I subtract 2, I get x equals negative 2. The right side, I can add 3 to both sides. I get 2x equals 3. Next, I divide by 2. And I get x equals 3 divided by 2 is 3 over 2, and I don't even need a calculator. Those will be my two answers, and that's it. So I'm going to wrap things up there, and you guys, I will see you all soon.